Imagine walking up to an ATM, sliding your card in, and realizing your money, your hard-earned savings, has vanished into thin air. Not because you spent it, not because you overdraft, but because a smug little bank clerk decided you didn't matter. Now imagine that same bank mocking your last name, treating you like trash, until a $3 trick brought their entire system to its knees. If you've ever been underestimated, disrespected, or pushed around by people who thought you couldn't fight back, this story is for you. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because what started as a nightmare at a small-town bank turned into one of the sweetest revenge stories you'll ever hear. I'll never forget the day it started. It was supposed to be a normal afternoon. I had just finished a long shift at work, exhausted but relieved that payday had finally hit. Bills were due, groceries were running low, and I wanted to treat myself to a quiet dinner at home after weeks of stress. But when I slid my card into the ATM, the machine spat it back out like it was mocking me. Transaction declined. I tried again. Same thing. Confused, I walked inside the credit union branch. It wasn't a big bank, just a local small-town place I thought would be more personal. The kind of place where they'd know your name, treat you like a neighbor. God, was I wrong. Behind the counter was a clerk who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Her eyes flicked over me with that "why are you even here" look. I explained politely that my card wasn't working and I just needed to withdraw some cash. Instead of helping me with urgency, like this was my money after all, she sighed, tapped her keyboard lazily, and then handed me a little slip with a code. "Just use this at the machine. It'll pull directly from your account," she said, like she was doing me a favor. And you know what? At that moment I was grateful. Thought, okay, problem solved. Just a glitch. But what I didn't know then was that this tiny inconvenience was about to spiral into a month-long nightmare that would test every ounce of patience I had. A few days later, I checked my account online, just to make sure everything was fine. That's when I noticed something strange. My balance hadn't updated properly. I wasn't overdrawn, I hadn't made any huge purchases, but the system looked off. So I called the bank's customer service. And that's when the real hell began. The first person I spoke to barely let me explain before cutting me off. "Well, sir, sometimes accounts are flagged for review. You'll just need to wait." Wait for what? That's my money in there. What exactly are you reviewing? She didn't give me a straight answer, just a sarcastic, "I don't make the rules." That was the start of it. Over the next week, I called again and again. Every time I was brushed off. Some reps laughed under their breath. Others gave me vague excuses like technical error or system delay. And then, whether they meant to or not, their tone shifted whenever they said my name. My last name doesn't sound local. It's foreign. And suddenly, I wasn't just a customer. I was that guy, the outsider, the one they could mock behind closed doors. One clerk even chuckled and said, "Maybe if you had a more normal name, the system wouldn't get confused." I hung up the phone shaking with rage. My fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. My chest burned. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, or rather, the complete lack of it. For over a month, my funds stayed locked. Rent was a nightmare. Groceries had to scrape by. I was borrowing cash from friends just to stay afloat. And every time I called the bank, I was treated like dirt. Powerless. That's the word. They made me feel utterly powerless. But here's the thing about powerless people. We don't stay powerless forever. Because one night, after venting over the phone to my family back home, my younger cousin chimed in with something that sounded ridiculous at first. "You know, there's this service in Russia," he said, "where people get paid like pennies, literally pennies, to flood social media with whatever posts you tell them to. I've seen people use it for pranks, reviews, even revenge." I laughed. "So you're saying I should hire an army of Russians to go after my bank?" "Why not?" he replied. $3 gets you hundreds of posts. And trust me, no one wants their Facebook page looking like a war zone. First, I brushed it off. But later that night, lying awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every smug laugh and every snide remark from those clerks, I realized something. For $3, I could flip the balance of power. The idea felt ridiculous. It sounded like something from a late-night forum thread. Pay strangers tiny amounts and get them to post whatever you want. But ridiculous can be powerful when everything else has failed you. I was tapped out of polite requests and exhausted from being gaslit by the people who were supposed to protect my money. So I opened my laptop and started searching. The site looked exactly like you'd expect. Cheap layout, clunky English translations, payment options that made you wonder if you were doing something illegal when you weren't. There were packages. 50 posts for a few dollars, 100 for a bit more. You could pick the region of posters, American-looking profiles, UK, Russian, you name it. And you could even supply the exact text and hashtags. My finger hovered over the credit card field. My own bank had frozen my funds for weeks. I had been laughed at, dismissed, humiliated. My mind flashed back to the clerk's smirk, the normal name joke that had lodged like a splinter behind my ribs. A hot rush moved through me, the kind that's half adrenaline, half desperate hope. I typed in $3. If that sounds small, it's because it was. $3 bought me what I needed. 300 posts. 300 little pebbles to throw at a small bank until their pond turned to a storm. I started composing the posts. This part felt oddly clinical. I wasn't writing a manifesto. I wasn't inventing lies. I was stating facts. Clean, plain sentences that anyone could verify if they wanted to. My credit union froze my account for a month with no explanation. Bank refuses to return funds. Customer service mocks my name. Local credit union. Avoid at all costs. Underneath each post, I added a call to action. Anyone else had similar experience? I wanted the posts to look like real complaints, not a coordinated attack. My cousin helped with the prompts, tossing in tiny details that made the posts sound authentic. The name of the branch, the approximate time of day, the code the teller gave me. We added a few emotive flourishes. Frustration, tiredness, incredulity. Real people don't type like lawyers. Real people type like they've been mugged by their own bank and they just need someone to listen. And then we selected the target profile type. American looking, ages 25 to 45. The site menu read. We wanted the posts to blend in with local complaints, not stand out like a foreign brigade. If the bank saw a sudden spike from profiles in entirely foreign languages or locations, it would look like a bot attack and be easy to dismiss. We wanted plausible outrage. The night I clicked submit, I barely slept. I kept checking the bank's social feeds like someone refreshing the inbox after applying for a job. For hours there was nothing, then a single comment, then another and another. At first it was trickles. One post on their Facebook page, 2 tweets, a thread in the replies. They were short, a little messy, and perfect. By morning my phone was vibrating so much I put it face down and ignored it, convincing myself I didn't want to be driven mad by waiting. But curiosity won. I opened the bank's Facebook page and my jaw dropped. Hundreds of comments, dozens of posts. Complaints were pouring in like a flood that hadn't respected the levees. People were tagging the branch. People were asking how they could get their money back. The tone wasn't coordinated or robotic. It was messy, emotional, furious. Exactly what we'd engineered. The credit union's feed, which had been a sleepy stream of community outreach posts and pictures of smiling tellers, looked like a war zone. Someone had already posted screenshots of chats that looked like mine. Support responses with snarky lines I recognized. One of our posts even included the code the teller had given me, which made readers ask, "Wait, why would a teller give a code that bypasses the ATM? Is this normal?" Suddenly, the conversation was broader than me. It was about incompetence and systemic error, not a single disgruntled customer. I felt weird watching it. There was a thrill, but also this strange detachment, like I'd set something in motion and now had to let it run. My heart hammered in my throat. I closed my eyes and pictured the clerk from part 1. That look of bored superiority. I imagined the small office growing busy overnight with people answering angry messages. The manager frantically paging through reports. It felt delicious and terrifying at the same time. By lunchtime, the bank's page had spiraled beyond a simple PR problem. Local community groups were sharing the posts. Has anyone else been frozen out? One comment read. They did this to my grandmother, said another. A young woman posted a recorded voicemail she said she'd received from a support rep with a snide laugh audible in the background. The comments were piling up under the same picture of the branch that the bank used in every promotional post. Their brand image, built on trust and neighborly care, was evaporating one angry comment at a time. My phone rang. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won again. The number on the screen was one I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was warmer than I expected. This is Laura, I'm the call center manager, she said. Her voice was professional, but it had that strain of controlled urgency. We've been receiving complaints about your account. I wanted to personally reach out and apologize. I know this has caused a lot of inconvenience. My mouth went dry. I'd been dreaming of this call, but not like this. I listened to her speak, the polite phrases smoothed over with corporate training. My body was on high alert. My palms prickled, the old fight or flight hum in my stomach. That sensation, tight, metallic, was familiar now. It had been my companion for weeks. Thank you for calling, I managed, forcing my voice to stay calm. The memory of those chuckles and the normal name, remark, tightened my jaw. I appreciate you reaching out, but you have no idea how bad this has been. I understand, Laura said. There was a beat of silence, like she was choosing her words. We want to resolve this today. If you still don't want to keep your account, we can initialize a transfer of your full balance to another bank. And we can include $50 as a gesture for the trouble. Again, we're sorry. For a second, it felt like the heavens had opened. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to scream. My chest unclenched just a little. Relief washed over me like warm water. But another part of me sat back and watched, coldly analytical, and asked, why now? Why the sudden charm? Had they discovered something? Had the complaints reached someone who mattered? Or had they just realized that this was turning into a reputational crisis they couldn't afford? I thought about the site, the $3, the anonymous posts that had become a chorus. I thought about all the times my calls had been brushed off, all the snide little comments. I pictured the manager's face as she scrolled through the bank's social feeds. Maybe she had seen a screenshot go viral internally. Maybe the risk-averse suits upstairs had decided it was cheaper to placate one angry customer than to weather a full-blown social media storm. Okay, I said slowly. I'll take the transfer. Thank you for resolving this. My voice didn't tremble, but inside something unlocked. It felt like standing at the lip of a cliff and realizing you could either hold onto the cliff and be tossed around by the wind, or jump and finally feel the lift. My fingers loosened. We finished the call. The bank promised the transfer. They apologized. They were, in their way, contrite. But the call didn't feel like a victory. Felt like confirmation. They only acted when people started watching. They only listened when their public image was threatened. I closed my laptop and sat very still. A slow, almost religious calm settled in my chest. I thought of the clerk who had sneered at my name. I imagined her checking the branch's notifications as the posts came in, glancing at each angry comment, feeling the knot grow in her stomach as dozens of tiny grievances piled up and pointed directly at her workplace. Part of me wanted to message the bank publicly. This is what happens when you ignore people. Part of me wanted to remain invisible, to savor the private knowledge that I'd found a lever and pulled. Instead, I made a small, almost childish choice. I opened a browser, navigated to a comment thread where people were sharing similar experiences, and typed one short message. Glad you're getting help. Me too. I didn't sign my real name. I didn't need to. The posts I'd bought kept the pressure on. The bank had offered $50 to keep me satisfied. They had finally called me back. The immediate crisis was over, or so I thought. I lay back on the couch and let out a long breath. The adrenaline left my limbs like ice melting. A slow smile, almost incredulous, tugged at the corners of my mouth. For the first time in weeks, I slept without the nagging loop of dread. But a small, nagging voice at the back of my head whispered something I couldn't ignore. You can't control everything you start. Push the thought away. For now, the job was done. For now, the bank had been forced to listen. I had been forced to hunt for a solution. And in the end, my desperation had led to a tiny, perfect lever. The world had tilted, just a little, in my favor. When I woke the next morning, the first thing I did, before brushing my teeth, before even making coffee, was check my account. The balance was there. Every last cent. The number glowed back at me, steady and calm, like nothing had ever happened. And beneath it, a separate line. Plus $50 courtesy credit. I let out a laugh I didn't recognize. Half relief, half disbelief, with just a touch of bitterness wrapped around it. For weeks they had treated me like a nuisance, a foreigner who didn't belong, a problem they could dismiss with a smirk. And now, with a few hundred anonymous posts, they had folded in a single day. $3 had done what 30 phone calls couldn't. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that lingered in the back of my mind. I had started something I couldn't control. The posts were still out there, multiplying, festering. Every time I checked the credit union's page, there were more comments, more Me Too stories, more people piling on. Part of me wondered if I should feel guilty. After all, not every employee at that branch had mocked me. Some of them were probably just caught in the crossfire. The tellers, the social media intern, they were going to be drowning in angry notifications for weeks. But then I thought of that one clerk, the one who had laughed at my last name. I thought of the way the phone reps chuckled, the way they acted like my money wasn't really mine. And the guilt evaporated. Because here's the thing, power protects itself. Institutions like banks don't change because someone politely asks them to. They change when their reputation, their profit, their comfort is threatened. I hadn't lied. I hadn't fabricated wild stories. I had just amplified the truth and made sure it couldn't be ignored. Later that week, I ran into a neighbor who casually mentioned the chaos online. "Hey, did you see what's happening with that credit union?" he asked, his eyes wide. "Their social media is blowing up. People are saying the whole system is broken. I'm thinking of pulling my account." I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Yeah, I saw some of that. Crazy stuff." Inside, I was on fire. This was the ripple effect I hadn't planned but couldn't stop. My tiny act of revenge had cracked open a bigger conversation. Maybe other people who'd been dismissed or brushed off were finally finding their voices. Maybe the bank would have to face the consequences they had so casually dumped onto their customers. But here's the part one didn't expect: the calm that followed. For weeks, I had been in a constant state of tension. My stomach was a knot. My fists were always clenched. My thoughts circled the same anxious track every night. But once it was over, once I knew I'd been heard, once I knew they had been forced to pay attention, the tension dissolved. It wasn't about the $50. That was pocket change compared to the stress they'd caused me. It was about the validation. About knowing that I wasn't crazy, I wasn't powerless, and I wasn't alone. That clerk could laugh at my name all she wanted. But in the end, she and her bosses had been the ones scrambling, apologizing, and begging me to take my money back. I wish I could say I shut down the posts afterward, but I couldn't. The service didn't work that way. Once the pebble was dropped in the water, the ripples had to play out. So yes, the credit union's social media is probably still haunted by ghost complaints, threads they'll never fully erase, angry posts from accounts they can't trace. That's their problem now. And honestly, after the way they treated me, I can't say I'm losing sleep over it. There's a special kind of silence after revenge. Not loud, not triumphant, but heavy, solid, grounding. When I saw my balance restored, when I heard the manager's voice shift from smug dismissal to careful politeness, I knew I had won. It wasn't about crushing them. It wasn't about destruction. It was about balance, about taking back the power they had stolen when they locked me out of my own money. $3. That's all it cost. $3 to remind a smug little bank that people aren't playthings, that you can only push someone so far before they push back. And in the quiet that followed, I felt something I hadn't in weeks: peace. Revenge doesn't always come in the form of dramatic showdowns or life-shattering consequences. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's cheap. Sometimes it's as simple as turning the tables and watching the people who dismissed you squirm under the same weight they put on you. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about proving that no matter how small you feel, no matter how powerless they make you believe you are, there's always a lever you can pull. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, what's the smallest act of revenge you've ever seen that had the biggest impact? And of course, subscribe for more stories where justice, sweet, sweet justice, finally comes full circle. Because sometimes the best victories aren't won with fists or fury, but with $3 and a little creativity.